So I want to talk pricing. It's something that I am noticing a few people are struggling with, just understanding how to properly price your products. And so that's what I want to talk about today. There are a number of different strategies and things to consider when you are talking about pricing or thinking about pricing your product or your services. And I want to go through some of those today. Okay, so the initial things of obviously understanding why pricing is important is that, the pricing, yes, it may, ultimately is about the cost of your goods, but it also has a lot to do with your brand perception, but also your sales, right? So the price of your product has an impact on those things. So not only, the actual cost of the goods, but also brand perception and, how people perceive your brand is heavily dependent on your pricing, but also how many sales you're going to get is also then dependent on your pricing. So that's something that you need to consider. Things that influence pricing vary and range, but I'll talk about four, and these are probably the four more critical ones I think that you possibly should consider. So the first one is cost, right? So how much does the thing actually cost? How much does it cost to get to you? How much does it cost to get to your customer? That is a price that you need to consider. So materials, overheads, production, transport, taxes, all of those things need to be factored in when benchmarking your price. The second element, or the second way that you can price something is you can price it based on your competitors. So competitive pricing talks about the kind of pricing that you do as a benchmark on someone else. So because X, Y, and B sells this and I sell a similar product, I will sell the same thing because that's effectively what the market can pay, or that's that elasticity, I suppose, of the market. There is both negatives and positives to this, and I've seen them work both equally well. It's just you then have to understand the baseline costs first before you make a decision like that. And then understand strategically why you're making that decision, right? Is it because you want to undercut this person? Is it because you want to be competitive? Is it because you want to be a comfortable price for your customer, et cetera, et cetera? So why are you doing competitive pricing? Is it a strategy to, outcompete your customer, for example? The third thing that we need to consider when doing any pricing is, we touched on it a little bit, but it is your target audience, right? What is your actual customer prepared to actually pay for this thing? Not what you hope they will pay for it. So this needs you to do some research to find out if there is a similar product or similar service that exists out there. What are people paying, and what that looks like, right? So it's no point in saying, yeah, I've seen this person, they sell watches and their watches are, 100,000. And so I'm going to make a watch and sell it for 100,000. It's like, okay, but has that person actually sold watches, right? And what are the conditions under that person, for that person to sell a watch that is 100,000? And then, how can you then either compete or align yourself in that kind of way? The last thing that you need to consider when determining your price at any, this probably needs to be revisited more often than the others, is what the market conditions are like, right? So the season, what season are you playing in that is going to determine your pricing? Is this something that is a holiday requirement? Is it something that you can offset because it's Christmas time? Or is it something that people are buying now that people, have high anxiety or whatever? So what is the external or extenuating circumstances that someone would buy this in? And does your product make sense at that point, right? So you obviously know about seasonalities, but how does the economics of what's happening impact the people's power to buy this thing? So that's obviously something to consider. Core pricing strategies. This is basically how you would consider how would you price your thing. So we spoke about the cost of the pricing, but cost-based pricing, right? So if you determine that all of these things make sense for you, you are just going to price per cost. You're going to take the thing, add 40%, and that's your pricing. Another price strategy is you could do competitive pricing. So competitive pricing, I've spoken about this one. Value-based pricing, though, is something that's quite interesting, because value-based pricing talks about the brand that you've built, or the brand that's associated with it, carries a lot more weight than the actual product, tangible product. And so you are then able to price your product against the value. Expensive luxury goods fall in this category, where intrinsically the cost of the product may be, like for like. A leather bag and a leather bag, two leather bags are the same, but because I've put this badge or this logo on it, I can charge higher because of its perceived value. The other way that we kind of get around pricing is the psychological pricing aspect, where you would kind of make something look cheaper than it actually is, right? So $9.99 is much cheaper, not much, but like it's psychologically cheaper than 10. And so we are able then to trick our buyers into buying that thing because it's psychologically cheaper. And then the last thing that we also may need to consider is dynamic pricing. So dynamic pricing talks about the pricing that will change based on certain circumstances. So whether you get it on a Tuesday or you get it on a Friday, you may be different, or you are a woman or a man, or you are living in this area, right? There can be situations that change your pricing based on, you can set certain criteria. So for example, a really simple example, I think, is airlines, right? The way that you pay for airfare, everybody seemingly gets a different price, right? Whether you book on a Tuesday or on a Sunday or the night before, or as soon as the flight becomes available, like 6 months ahead, that sometimes it's easier or it's cheaper to book right like soon or later or whatever. That's basically dynamic pricing, and that's the idea when people consider how you can price things. Okay, so these are the things that you need to consider. And now that you have all of these things and you're like, okay, that's the idea, what are other things that you need to that you can do to influence your pricing, right? So what are the other ingredients that we can add into our basket? The one ingredient is increasing our average order cart value always, right? Make sure that you are able to get people to buy more, and this is bundle pricing. So that I am a huge fan of bundle pricing. The business that I built, the premise was on bundle pricing, where you effectively group a product or products together and offer them at a higher cost so that people can order more things. That is a pricing strategy where specifically, or people can specifically say, I'm going to offer this as a group, as a bundle, as a bouquet, as a whatever, and that's how I'm going to price it. Another way of setting pricing or understanding pricing techniques could possibly also be penetration pricing. So penetration pricing says, I'm going to introduce my pricing at a certain, my product at a certain price, just so that I can get my foot in the door. And then once I'm in there, then I will increase my prices. So this works well if you are sampling a product, if you're still validating your product, if you don't have a lot of clients and you're still wanting to get testimonials or that kind of thing. This could be a really good avenue to take to say, this is what the thing costs, and so this is what the market is looking like, but how do I actually how do I start pricing, or how do I enter the market? And this could be another way of this. There's two other advanced pricing techniques that I wanted to brush on, but they're a little bit out there, so just work with me. But the first one is called skimming, which is setting a high price initially and then lowering the price as the market adjusts. So skimming works really well if you are new to, if you've entered a market for the first time, right? If you are a pioneer and you've discovered this thing, you can start setting your prices quite high until people catch up because of stock availability or just like availability, right? If, the people who got in on the early, got in selling shea butter were selling it at like, I don't know, 100 rand per kilo. It was just like buckets and buckets of money being made because there was so few people doing it. But as the demand and as the market grows, then your pricing has to adjust. So that's obviously something that you need to consider, right? Like if you started off very, very high in your pricing because there weren't so many players in the field, when there does become more players in the field, do you then adjust your pricing, or do you continue to charge what you charge, right? You can, and that's totally fine. Charging what you charge is a perfectly normal value-based pricing as we can go off, but understand that it could be detrimental to your brand if that is the way that you are thinking. The other way of just getting people into the door, or getting yourself into the door, is offering something usually SaaS companies or technology companies will call freemium. So free plus a premium, or free and then add on with premium products. So getting people in, getting people opted in, getting people subscribed, getting people to try, getting people to come for a consultation freely. Not making them pay for anything, and then upselling them something once they're in. So now that you're here, let me upsell you something. Or if you want an additional thing, then you have to pay for it, that kind of thing. So that's also something that can work, especially if you've got something like a service-based businesses can work quite well if you're doing a freemium service. If you're starting out, get people in with a free consultation, then you sell them the product, or something like that, right? So that's the idea with pricing. It's like you need to be quite strategic and considerate when you are pricing, whether it is a product or a service, just because it has an impact on the growth of your business. The other thing that also you need to consider when pricing your product is the volume of sales that you need to make to win, right? I think a lot of us, especially when we are entering into physical products, underestimate what the online market actually looks like, and understand conversion rate optimization, right? Or conversion rates. Your conversion rates, I have a course about it as well, is basically the amount of people that will actually buy your thing based on the traffic, the initial traffic that you get. Statistically speaking, historically research based, it's to say, if you get 100 people looking at your product, only one of those people, only two of those people are going to buy. And so your job as an entrepreneur is to make sure that you're getting 10,000 people to look at your thing. And so that's where the marketing effort comes in, because if it's 10,000 and it's only 10,000 people looking is going to convert at 1% or whatever, so there's those kinds of things. I talk about it it's a free course. I'll link it somewhere below, or put it, I think it's in my Instagram bio, check it out. But those are the things also that you need to consider when you are pricing, because if you are pricing something that is you need high volumes for, how many products are you going to be able to sell, and how long can you sustain possibly running at a loss, or possibly not making the numbers that you need to meet your targets before you succeed. So yeah, that is what I have to say about pricing. I don't want to say any more because I think it is a little bit, it starts to get repetitive after a while. But do consider what your strategies and what your thinkings around pricing are. It's very important because ultimately we are in the business of making money. So if this was helpful, please do let me know anywhere you're watching this video. Slide me a DM if you've got any questions, and I will be glad to answer them. Thank you so much again, and I will see you somewhere on the internet. Bye.